So good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everyone, depending where you are joining us from. We still have a few people logging in, but let's start. I think we are ready to go. My name is Joost Wagner. I'm your moderator. Thanks for joining our 5th edition of our webinar series, Getting Through the Crisis Together, Asian Dialogues on Sustainability in the Textile and Garment Industry. Our topic today is making gender equality a reality. And this 5th webinar is jointly organized by GIZ Fabric and by the ILO. So we're going to look at the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on workers in the textile and garment sector in Asia from a gender perspective. So I'm going to show you a quick overview what we are going to do today. So I have a slide for you. So we're going to have a quick welcome by GIZ Fabric and by the ILO Decent Work Program. And afterwards, I'm going to give you a few house rules and some introductions. We have also a few polls for you. So we're going to start also very soon with a poll. Then we're going to ask Joni Simpson from the ILO to set the scene for our webinar today. And as usual, we're going to continue with 3 very interesting panelists joining us today from Bangladesh, from the United States, and from Indonesia. We're going to have a kind of talk show style panel for 35, 40 minutes max. And then we're going to straight into Q&A session, and you can engage with us via the chat function. I will tell you more about it later. And last but not least, we're going to finish as usual with some closing reflections by Dr. Stephen Frost from Go Blue. So I'm going to hand over to our 2 representatives from GIZ Fabric and from ILO. We have on the one hand, Irene Gensmer. She's the gender coordinator from GIZ Fabric based in Cambodia, and she will be followed by the senior specialist for gender equality and non-discrimination of the ILO Decent Work team in Bangkok, Joni Williams. So welcome, and over to you, Irene. And I'm gonna...
Yes, thank you, Joost. A very warm welcome to our webinar, Asian Dialogues. One of the few good things of this Corona crisis is that through the digital tools, we can reach out to many stakeholders in the textile and garment sector all over the world. And we feel that the willingness for knowledge sharing and for cooperation has increased. And that is actually the core of our Fabric program. We facilitate knowledge exchange and cooperation among the stakeholders in the garment and textile sector, from the brands in Europe and the US, to the producers in Asia, to employee representatives and civil society. In this regard, I would really like to say a welcome also to our STAR Network members. The STAR Network is a network of business associations we have initiated in our program, and they are also part of the Asian Dialogue series. Today's webinar has been, as Joost already said, has been done in cooperation with the ILO Decent Work Program. And talking about cooperation, we are really happy about this very fruitful and trustful cooperation we are having with the ILO Decent Work Program here. A few words about the Fabric program. We are focusing on 6 Asian countries, that is Bangladesh, China, Cambodia, Myanmar, Pakistan, and Vietnam. And our core topics are labor rights and occupational health and safety, as well as environmental topics such as climate action, energy efficiency, and chemical management. We are also focusing on gender equality, and where did this Corona pandemic has led us on gender equality? I feel that we are somehow back to zero. We all know that women have been always at the bottom line of the food chain in this industry, but at least we have formal employment, we have some standards, we have minimum wage. But now with this crisis, everything has fallen apart. So many women lost their jobs, and I just read in the news about Cambodia that these women are now gathering at pre-dawn gatherings, and there are some brokers looking for workers to do a 1 day or 1 week shift. There are no rules, and with so many desperate women now looking to earn some money because they have children to feed or they have parents depending on them. Actually, there is no law anymore. The brokers can do whatever they like. And one worker reported that she has been working, she was asked for a 1 week shift and she is working for 4 days. And then at the 5th day, she wasn't picked up anymore and she didn't get any money. So it is giving an impression where we are right now. And I feel we really have to take action now, because if we don't, it will take a very long time after or during the COVID recovery to get to that stage where we actually have been already. So now we really have to look into this topic and to take action. And I'm really looking forward to this webinar. We have very knowledgeable speakers who could give us an impression of the situation and who can let us know where and how to take action. And with this, I hand over to Joni.
Thank you, Irene and Joost, and hello, friends and colleagues. Welcome to today's webinar. ILO is very pleased to be part of the Asian Dialogues on Sustainability in the Textile and Garment Industry, and thank you to GIZ for their ongoing partnership. So my name is Joni Simpson, and I lead the gender component at the ILO CEDA Decent Work in Garment Supply Chain Asia project, which is the co-host of one of the co-hosts of today's webinar. The Decent Work in Garment Sector Supply Chain Asia project brings together knowledge and good practices from across the sector in Asia for enhanced regional coordination and action to drive decent work and sustainability. And the ILO CEDA project focuses on 4 main areas of action, which are very complementary with the GIZ project: social dialogue, productivity, environmental sustainability, and gender equality, which of course is the main topic of today's discussion. I look forward to hearing all of our panelists and the discussion that follows, and I'd like to hand back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, both, and we will hear more from Joni in a few minutes from now. So I just wanted to showcase that we have a very diverse audience today. I would say about 50% registered from Asia, maybe half of these 50% from South Asia, the other half from the ASEAN region, and then maybe an extra 10% from East Asia, China, Hong Kong, Mongolia, and Korea, Japan, and 25% approximately from Europe, and a very warm welcome to our friends and colleagues from the Americas. It's approximately, for many of them, 6, 7 a.m. in the morning. Thank you for waking up for this webinar. And also you can see that we have a very diverse representation from various organizations, and we see that about 1/3 approximately either from brands and retailers or from manufacturing groups and factories. So that's very nice to see. Thank you for joining. And now I wanted to give a few hints how we're going to run this webinar again. So you will be all muted at all times if you're an attendee, but you can engage with us via the chat function. Many of you have already found it. You can ask questions there or comments, or let us know where you're calling in from. The webinar is being recorded, and of course we will make a link available very shortly after this webinar on at various channels. And if you are actually registered, you will get a link in due time probably with the invitation to the next one. So if you have to leave early, so you can see also the rest. Our panelists will answer 3 questions, and I saw that we are now complete. Nazma managed to join us, so we're going to have 3 questions for each of them, and then this will be followed by the Q&A for another 30 minutes. And we also have a small poll for you before I ask Joni to come back and set the scene. And I think it's already on. And I will stop sharing my screen for a second. So you see it on the right side, there should be some polling. These are actually 2 questions, and you're going to hear the result of the poll after. But we're going to ask you again how well the garment sector is doing in terms of responding to the crisis, how we are working together. You know that we are talking, we're having this title, working in the crisis together. And secondly, we also want to know how you perceive the gender equality commitments by industry stakeholders. And so we are very interested to hear from you. We leave it open for a couple of minutes, and I will hand over now back to Joni, who will set the scene for us, and I will open the slides again because she has prepared for us 3 slides. Joni, over to you.
Thanks so much, Joost. So I'd like to raise a few key areas on gender equality. As we know, the garment sector brought millions of women workers into the formal economy, and many of them for the first time. So it's a hugely important sector. And we also know that on average, women account for 80% of the garment sector workforce. And many of the impacts of COVID-19 throughout the sector will be disproportionately felt by women because of that. So, and also largely due to these underlying effects of discrimination, violence and harassment, lack of women's representation and leadership, wage gaps and unpaid care and family obligations that existed pre-COVID. So when we excuse me, I'm just having a little problem here with my computer. Okay. So when we look at the slide, and we see the concentration of women in low-skilled, low-paid, limited types of jobs, high informality, low access to social protection. This was the pre-COVID situation. And now we are seeing that women will be on the front line, the first to lose their jobs because they are at the bottom of the pyramid and in largely in precarious jobs and opportunities. And so these jobs will be the first to go, many without social protection or safety nets. This also potentially means that pre-existing gender inequalities that I mentioned on the left could be widened, and previous gains on poverty reduction and gender equality that this sector had so importantly brought forward may be lost. And we're starting to see the impacts of that on the ground. Now, on the second point, which is around unpaid care, this is the top constraint to women's advancement in the world of work in this region. Women take up the lion's share of unpaid care and household duties in all regions, but this region is particularly stubborn. Women do on average 4 times as much unpaid work, and the global average is 3 times. So when we add up women's paid and unpaid work, this means that women in Asia have the longest days. And then unfortunately, men on average in this region do the least unpaid care work of all regions. So this means that women have less time available for other activities, including paid work, but also skills upgrading, for example, or participating in a trade union. This makes it difficult to advance in their careers. And we've got a short brief on this to share with you in the chat box, and there is an Ilo Labor Standard on this topic as well, providing practical measures on what companies can, and many of them are doing, to support the unpaid care burden. COVID-19 has brought on additional unpaid care burdens, like caring for sick family members, homeschooling, and caring for children. And since women are the majority of workers in this sector, this could complicate their return to work and put them at a disadvantage. Women will be more likely to be held back from the return to work and may be overlooked or lose their opportunity when factories reopen. They may fall out of the formal economy altogether and then be caught in precarious work. Could we change slides, please? Now, even though the majority of garment workers are women, there is low representation of women in leadership, social dialogue, policy making, and in management across this sector and generally in the world of work. So during COVID-19, when we look to policy responses, we're seeing that women's voices and a gendered analysis of the impacts of policies and responses to COVID-19 are generally absent. This risks to render the responses gender blind and to perpetuate or further exacerbate existing inequalities. And this is most likely unintentional, but it's going to make the responses less effective. Now, there's an opportunity here to do things differently. And in times of crisis, and now more than ever, companies need the best solutions for complex problems, and this comes with diversity. And the fourth issue I'm going to raise is the issue of violence and harassment in the world of work. As in other sectors, worrying levels of gender-based violence and harassment have been documented in the garment sector. And during COVID-19, confinement has led to increases in domestic violence, particularly against women, and who are the main victims of gender-based violence. This risks to spill over into the workplace as workers, employers, and families feel the weight of the stress caused by COVID-19. And women in particular during these times may need supports as they recover, for example, from domestic violence. And on the job, as workers and employers face the stresses of COVID-19, companies are keen to ensure a safe workplace free from violence and harassment. And I'd like to mention briefly that the ILO's new standard on eliminating violence and harassment in the world of work provides guidance, both at the national policy levels and also at the enterprise and factory level. And we'll be sharing a short brief on COVID-19 and violence and harassment and these new standards during the webinar. And employers, workers, and government agree that violence and harassment are incompatible with decent and productive work and have negative spillover effects in enterprises. So this is critically important. Can we change slides, please? Now, we'd like to highlight some short, medium, and long-term impacts of COVID-19 from a gendered perspective. The immediate loss of income and its ripple effects on the ability of families to meet their basic household needs will be felt, in particular by women moving into more precarious livelihoods. We're going to see an increase in unpaid care work, which I've highlighted, and increases in gender-based violence. Workers are likely to be exposed to risks of infection in the world of work, both within and beyond the physical workplace or on their way to work, for example. Women are more likely to be directly and indirectly discriminated against in retrenchment and return to work due to their family responsibilities and possible mobility restrictions. Some factories are only hiring people on short contracts, as was mentioned by Irene. And since orders are small and not consistent, so many of the women workers have either moved back to their villages or farms or are becoming street vendors. We anticipate that as the sector recovers, there will be some winners and losers, and some countries, of course, where the level of demand may not return. And this will have impacts on women's employment in particular. Can we change slides, please? Now, over the medium term, we expect that there will be a deepening of economic crisis that could lead to prolonged poverty and may prevent opportunities for effective social dialogue and again, gender responsive dialogue. A lack of access to financial inclusion may prevent workers, particularly women migrant workers in rural communities, from accessing any of the available social protection schemes. And workers, especially women workers, may be in more precarious working conditions than before, with higher risks of labor rights violations. And women workers are susceptible to experiencing adverse health outcomes due to, for example, a reduced access to essential services such as sexual and reproductive health services. Change slides, please. Now, over the long term, we expect a prolonged period of unemployment and poverty post-COVID-19, which will impact disproportionately women. There'll be a longer term unemployment of women garment workers, which could adversely affect their economic and social empowerment. Again, a loss of ground already achieved. There'll be trends of nearshoring and automation that could accelerate and leave many women without jobs in many of the countries. Also, women may not have alternative forms of formal employment and low-skilled jobs outside of the garment sector, which could lead into increased informality and precarious working conditions, which is something we saw in a previous crisis. And we can think of the intergenerational impacts on health and education for children and well-being in particular of families with the losses of these jobs. Last slide, please. Now, finally, and in conclusion, we see that business as usual is unlikely. And this is a rare opportunity to redesign the industry to include gender equality, environmental sustainability, and build back a better normal. And businesses need the best solutions for complex problems through diversity and representation of their workers, and including women in social dialogue, representation, and leadership. It won't happen without dedicated efforts. By being intentional with dedicated and country-relevant actions, the status quo can be broken and progress can continue on the gender equality front and perhaps even be bolstered. Now, the last point is that working together is key. Partnerships, alliances are important moving ahead. And we need to take actions to make sure that the gains that are in place are not lost. Thank you, and back over to our moderator.
Thank you very much, Joni. And this, I think, was a great kickoff for our conversation with our three panelists. So, but before we're going to start, and I see already some people asking questions in the chat box to actually Joni, although let's see if we can bring you back later. I wanted to ask my colleague Lisa Schröder from GZ Fab. She has the control save us for info. Some feedback maybe we're asking. So I don't.
Yes, thank you very much, and welcome everybody. So in our first question, we wanted to know from you, what do you think, how well the topic of gender equality is part of the responses? Joost, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah? Okay, wonderful. Then I will just really quickly present the results. So as you can see, I showed the results to everyone. 22% said that including responses in the crisis are doing rather poorly, and even 9% of you said they're doing like quite poorly. And this is also reflected when we have a look at the second questions where we asked, in your view, how will gender equality be a commitment for industry strong stakeholders? And 17% of you said there will be less commitment. On the other hand, 19% of you said there will be no chance, And on the good side, there's like 18% of you who said there will be an increase of commitment. So the answers from you very different here. I mean, what we can clearly see is that the responses to overcome the crisis are now that they are not so good in your opinion. And so I think what we should all be aware of is that this current situation could be a setback of the work of recent years towards more gender equality. And this was also said by Joni and Irene. So this situation could, on the other hand, be a possibility to work collectively, to work together to stop this from happening. All right, these were the results from our first round of questions.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and we will hear from you one more time later. Thank you so much. I want to introduce you now to our three panelists, and we are very happy that they could find the time to join us. And let me start with Ms. Nazma Akhtar, the Executive Director of the Avaj Foundation. Nazma is not only a person who has committed more than 32 years for improving workers' rights, especially in the garment sector in Bangladesh, but she's also the president of Sumilito Garment Ceramic Federation, one of the largest federations in Bangladesh. She's also an Ashoka Fellow 2019 and the co-chair of the Asia Pacific Women's Committee of Industry All Global Union. Welcome, Nazma. Secondly, I welcome Ms. Eli Rosita Silaban. She's the president of the Konfederasi Serikat Buruh Seluruh Indonesia, better known as the Confederation of Indonesian Trade Union outside Indonesia. Eli is Indonesia's first female trade union leader from Tapanuli Utara in North Sumatra province of Indonesia. And she also has spent 20 years in the labor movement and 15 years as a union leader. First with FSB Gartex, the Federation of Textile and Garment Workers Union, and then with KSBSI, the Confederation of All Indonesian Trade Union. Welcome, Eli. And last but not least, at the early hours in the United States, I think 7 o'clock or shortly after 7 o'clock, Mr. Scott Dietz, the founder and president of Convene Communication Strategies, an organization that all kind of stakeholders are consulted by this organization, such as global companies, NGOs, or policymakers in reputation management and value creation. But prior to that, Scott has been leading government relations, corporate communications, and philanthropic activities in the garment and footwear sector for many years. So he brings very practical experience to the table, and Scott used to work first with VF Corporation and later with Contour. So better known in the general public, I guess, for brands such as Lee and Wrangler. And he was a vice president for public affairs overseeing corporate communication, sustainability, and responsibility. So thanks so much, Scott, for joining us so early and getting up so early and joining us today. So let's start. And I'm going to start with Nazma. And Nazma, please unmute your mic. So Nazma, you spent over 3 decades fighting worker rights, especially for women in Bangladesh. You are the executive director of the Avaj Foundation, a grassroots labor rights NGO with over 600,000 members. Can you give us a picture of what's happening on the ground now for workers in Bangladesh?
Thank you, moderator, and giving me the opportunity to talk about this today, about this situation in Bangladesh. If I'm going to talk about the ground, this garment sector in Bangladesh, almost nearly 40 years. So that we are doing export oriented in Europe is a main market, then America, Australia, Canada, and other countries also. The challenge and the ground is the main problem. Who are coming to run the production in a poor country like Bangladesh, coming for the cheap and labor market, which make everything is a bad impact and bad working condition. For example, in Bangladesh, the minimum wage is 95 USD, which is not sufficient for life and livelihood to survive, but we need to do. And the workers are working more than 10 hours, 12 hours, 7 days a week, even because they need extra hour to work. And many cases, they don't on-time payment also sometimes is issues about that. job security is a big issue if we are wanted to unionize or organize freedom of association and collective bargaining. These are also very key issues also. And also the most in our country, like now is a 60% female are working in this sector, but used to be 85 to 85%. Due to the auto machine and future work, digitalization also creating women's jobless. So many issues also, and the gender-based violence and the harassment, abuse within the workplace, for the management, also the co-workers, also in the community, also from the family. It's a multi-tracks. And also these women are in Bangladesh, 30 to 40% female women who has no husband, and they need to depend with this job, and they are depending on this. So, you know, this job is important for the female workers and for their empowerment and surviving them, because they come from the rural to urban and they're working on this area. But there is no respect, there is no dignity, there is no fundamental issues are addressing, because they have no living wages, they don't have proper freedom of association and collective bargaining, gender-based violence. And most of our garments workers in Bangladesh, female, the malnutrition is a big challenge, because that is why they have malnutrition related all kind of diseases. If we are going for the daycare center and children's rights, there is also, as per law said, if there is any factory has more than 40 women workers, there must be daycare and center for the women workers. But you know, there is very few factory we have, but most of the factory doesn't have. Maybe they have the buyer auditing, they are putting some small there is some room, they put toy, game, pillow, bed, something, but there is no baby. And most of the female workers, their children, after 2 months, they send it to the countryside, stay with their family, and there is doesn't have the breastfeeding rights. They are not the children has not proper growth to growing. The women are always depression and frustration also it's happened. And this is the reality all the time happen. And also the productivity and many issues are also high, but the workers living condition is very poor. And maybe the working condition, because of the Rana Plaza collapse, the Tajrin fire, money accident, there is some change about the working condition. But if we go the real life of workers living condition, there is nothing changed. People are living in the slum, very poor factory or something. And even the things who are producing for the big brand, fast fashion brand or discount, because the labor cost is same. So there is no value for us if we work for the luxury brand, high fashion brand or discount, because our wages is a minimum wage, and which is everyone is paying. So that is the why. And there is not a transparency business. People are coming to our country and asking for low wages, low prices. Every after order, they are also asking for these things. And if I'm going to the COVID-19 also, because the COVID-19, when it started, whole world is going to affected on the store is going close. But you know, these people who are taking a lot of profit, lot of margin and lot of benefit, they are not taking any responsibility, not a supplier. Even they are take the wrong decision to cancel the order, holding suspension, and after that they are asking for discount. And our workers giving their salary 30%, 35% salary discount. And the question is here, when the profit goes to the brand or supplier, they are not giving the profit share to them. But why the workers are going, especially the female workers, are giving that a loss? And we don't have any social protection, we don't have any unemployment scheme, and nothing is there. And it's COVID, number of female workers, they lost their job. There is not proper compensation. They are not getting payment. Even the March salary, many women workers haven't get. So the things, there is no justice, there is no accountability, there is no equal distribution power, there is not systemic change, and the power is not for the poor people, and the business are very much related with the politics in the parliament, so power is going for them. The people are workers are hunger, and number of workers lost their job, number of workers are vulnerable, and many, I told you in the beginning, the many of the girls as single who are single mother, and now they lost the job. Who feed their child? How they have to survive? You know, the gender-based violence is creating more now at the workplace, at the community, even the home, because when girls are not paying the money to the husband, and now they are asking to give the money, and they're physically beaten, they're verbally abused. Even the boss, if found a small problem, immediately lost the job. So, you know, the mental depression, frustration, physical harassment, many things are going on. These young girls are who are producing textile and fast fashion goods. So there is not anything doing for the Europe, America government also not focus for this. Even the our supplier are also asking how to give the less wages, less benefit. So this is the reality, and this is the things going on. That nobody is giving value and respect to the female workers, because only the who are making goods and products, and the discount, somebody has to pay in behind. Who are they? The workers. Nothing in free in this world. Somebody has to pay. That is our workers' blood and sweat. So that is why consumer also need to know the where the goods are coming, how these are running, and they have to be also responsible buying system, and they have to also make accountable to the fashion brand who are producing goods like Bangladesh, India, Cambodia, Vietnam, and everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazma. So we're going to come back to that. And as you know, the title of our series is about working together. Let's see if there are opportunities to work together. But I would like to hear also the perspective from Indonesia. And Ellie, you're the president of the Confederation of All Indonesian Trade Union and the first female trade union leader from Tapanuli Utara in North Sumatra. And I understand there are still only a handful of female trade union leaders in the country. So in Indonesia, what's happening there on the ground now for workers, in particular for women workers in the garment and textile industry in Indonesia? Can you give us a picture? And yes.
Thank you for giving me the time. Yeah, after I hear from all the situation right now in Bangladesh, it's really better in my country, because even though we affected by the COVID, but we didn't see something like female workers exodus going back to their village, but they still stay in the city, and more than company still operation right now. Of course, we facing also the dismissal by the employer, and also laid off, but not really like happened in Cambodia, in Bangladesh. According to the Ministry of Power, the total affected by the COVID right now is around 1.7 million. As a result of social distancing and also large-scale restriction, by our government. But according to statistic data,
Ellie, I think you have to. There is a little bit sound problem again. Can you speak closer to the mic?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, because everybody wants to hear what you are saying.
Can you hear me now?
I think it's slightly better. Sorry to interrupt. But
yeah, never mind. Yeah, according to Indonesian statistic data, number of female workers reaches more than 46 million, and manufacturing industry ranks third as the sector that absorb the most female workers. Let's say nearly. If you're asking about the women who work in the garment, as I told you before, back home to their villages, but they still stay continue the operation, just stay there.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Ellie. I think you have to switch off the mic, switch off the webcam for a second while you're speaking. In this moment, I think the internet connection is not so good where you are. So can you just can you just switch off the webcam for a moment? And while you're speaking, we all hear you very well. Then better, because I think with the video it's not clear enough.
Okay, so like
Yeah.
this?
Yes. Thank you.
Like here?
Yes.
Yeah. Workers in certain companies continue to work in situations that are threatened with the transmission of COVID, because the big company right now still operation, but some of them also make a decision to reduce their working hours and also reduce the day. For instance, workers in the hundreds of thousands work in the same place in crowded space, do not use adequate personal protective equipment, but not all in company. I just told you that some company, but some company also prepare it, and also employer asking the workers to use of the equipment. Women accompanying their children also who study online at home. So this is we call double burden. Because I don't know why in Asia we didn't see. I said on behalf of women in Indonesia, most of women in Indonesia told about this, because we have a group also. Why only women always accompanying their children during stay at home and also make online studying with their teacher? Where is the men? I don't know why, but I hope the men also will hear about this. But the men always said because women always pay attentively than men. So this is also need to change. And some workers, because I would like to talk to you about the working situation right now in Indonesia. Some workers have been laid off without getting full wages, and some even without severance pay. But till now, the trade unions still fight for their right. Some of them succeed, but some of them also fail to get the salary. But if you're asking about whether the workers say yes if the employer suddenly some of them, because they didn't join yet with the union, so they have no umbrella to fight for them. And then right now, as you know, more than 1,000 workers just come to Facebook, to Messenger, asking the assistant from our trade union to fight for their right, because before they didn't join the union, but right now they need the union to fight for their right. So it's also the challenge for us, and also why they realize right now when they have no problem at all in their company or in the working place, they just enjoy their life. So yeah, that is for now, but we'll see in new normal in Indonesia right now. The operation will be running smoothly, we hope, even though employers said recovery will be take until 2 or 3 years. But we hope, because we just discussed with the workers come from the many companies surrounding Indonesia. We didn't see like very difficult things like in Bangladesh, but we thank for that, because I can say that the power of the dialogue with the employer, and also what is the benefit you join the union clear right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ellie. Scott, you held senior management position at VF and at Contour Brands, and you listened to Nazma and Ellie, and I know you moved on now to your communication consulting firm, but from the perspective of a senior brand manager, what's the main thing that comes to mind after listening to our two female union representatives?
Yes, well, thank you and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody. Nazma, it's a pleasure to hear you once again. I don't know if you remember, we had an opportunity to meet about 5 years ago, and that was when I first heard your passion for this issue. Before I start, I want to acknowledge the biases that I bring to the table. Yes, I did work in the apparel sector. Yes, I did work on the corporate side, but please know that today I don't speak on behalf of any particular brand. The observations that I will share with you today are genuine and sincere and very supportive and sometimes very painful to hear. This is a very, very complicated matter. I'm a white man from the United States with the background that I have, and obviously I'm not 25 years of age. But there is promise to be found in this opportunity. I was moved by what I heard, particularly about the notion of having a voice. And I've made some notes here that I hope are helpful, and I do reinforce. A woman's voice in leadership on this matter in the midst of COVID and after COVID absolutely matters. So this is more about gender-based violence and harassment. It's also about elevating a woman's voice into the leadership team of a particular organization. This is both a social issue and a business issue. And there are lots of reasons why I think we face these issues, particularly in the Asian region. One is, as I've heard today, a lack of justice, a lack of unified and powerful voices from a number of different people and organizations. Sometimes it's a lack of rule of law, and sometimes there is a norm of cultural acceptance that needs to be addressed over time. Lastly, as a business person, now as an advisor to others, the business model is very, very, very complicated. On one hand, you have generally well-intentioned brands who are simply working to have good apparel produced, delivered on time, of a high quality at low cost so that they can satisfy their consumers. And yes, to Nazma's point, one of the reasons why they are in Asia is because of low cost. However, I will tell you that to a person, every person that I've ever met on the brand side, there is none of them support the notion of gender-based violence and workplace harassment. Sometimes it's a situation of a lack of understanding. Sometimes it's a situation of hope that possibly this will be solved within the region. But more and more today, brands are beginning to realize two things. One, the brand's voice matters in your region. And secondly, more and more, brands are beginning to realize that being proactive in standing against gender-based workplace violence and harassment is actually a competitive advantage. And to not do so today will result in problems down the road where their key stakeholders like investors, employees, the media, NGOs, and others will object to their conduct and force them to change. So as you'll hear later in my comments, more and more businesses are becoming more proactive than reactive, and much of it has to do with the work that Ellie and Nazma are doing.
Thank you, Scott, for these introductory remarks, and we will hear more from you later. I just learned that Nazma has left the call because of connection problems. She's coming any second back. So let me continue with Ellie. I mean, we know that we are now in some kind of recovery phase, at least in Bangladesh. And so Ellie, do you see, well, we wanted to ask actually a question, how you compare it to Indonesia. So I have to ask you, what is the risk for the garment and textile industry if we do not put gender as a key consideration into the recovery plans? And maybe you can also tell us a little bit how well Indonesia is recovering, in your opinion, in the moment. I have to unmute. I will unmute you. Yes, go ahead.
Our government is not really did like lockdown, just large scale restriction. That's why the company still operation, even though not all the company. So if you say about if we do not put the gender as a key consideration into recovery, because I think that gender plays an important role in assigning roles and responsibilities within group of workers, gender, because if we talk about gender, that's not mean gender only belongs to a woman, but we should be thinking about the men. But as you know that in Indonesia, trade union not really concerned before about the gender issue, but lately after Convention 190, right now we established with more than 50 elements to discuss about the gender issue. Because if we talk about the gender, we should be thinking about the sensitivity and gender aspect become very important to establish the policy during pandemic, because when I saw the television, all the people who explain the information about the COVID almost then come from the male. So we didn't see about the what is that the female feeling in that situation. So I think gender should be appear there, because gender mainstreaming is a key strategy to reduce inequalities among gender group. Gender group. So it can be achieved if in trade union also put the gender issue as a top priority right now, and taking to the account what to be need after recovery, because not we only say about the how to recovery, but how the problem in certain right now should be involved to the policy and strategy, because who knows pandemic will be happen right now. So pandemic should be put the gender issue, because female can explain about what female needs, and also male can explain what male needs. So pandemic should also be seen. You can hear me? Yeah. The pandemic also should be seen as an opportunity to improve pre-existing rule regulation. I think we need to change our attitude, and also change the collective bargaining, even though before, for example, we already assigned the collective bargaining, but we never put about the COVID issue or also gender issue in that bargaining. So I think that is very important to us to come to deeper about gender issue to recovery, not only how to recovery and send them back to the working place, but how they continue, and also there is will be a fair for lives.
Terima kasih. Thank you, Ellie. I'm notice that Nazma still has problems to come back. No problem. I want to remind all our audience that you can actually ask questions, not only comments. And I see a lot of interesting comments and supportive comments in the chat. But if you have a question to our speakers, you can write it to all participants in the chat, and we try to select as many as possible for the remaining time. Scott, you heard Ellie speaking now, and so in your opinion, why should actually brands in the current circumstances still care about putting gender in front and center of recovery plans? Your mic.
That is very difficult to do. Earlier on, I said that I would share a point of view that may not be particularly popular or hard to hear, but if I could, I'd like to add a bit of context. Those businesses that are making decisions at the brand level are also feeling enormous pressures. Their revenue is declining. They are laying off employees. They are putting people on furlough, which means that at some point people may be returning back to their jobs. Again, whether we like to acknowledge it or not, their shareholders are very unhappy with the performance of the company. The suppliers are being hurt. Really, everyone along the business chain that I referred to as being very complicated earlier is being affected. So how do we overcome that? One, many people have often heard me say, the world is run by those who show up. In the midst of these post-COVID conversations, the topic of gender-based workplace violence and harassment must be on the agenda. Now, understand that it is going to be on the agenda with many, many other things, but show up, be a voice, collaborate with other people, and do your best to move that agenda item up in a way that matters. Second, to the extent that it is not addressed immediately in the post-COVID period, because of other complicating or competing matters, always keep it on the agenda. Don't ever let it disappear. As we would say, beat the drum, beat the drum, beat the drum, so that the message here is never lost. Third, I would like to talk a little bit about the current social environment around the world. Climate change, injustice. In the United States, we have matters associated with Black Lives Matter and equality. This is not going away. This is not stopping. And just as we are discussing it in the US, in Europe, in Asia, there are many other topics that will be coming together under this broader scope of injustice and the need for equality, including sexual harassment and violence in the workplace, including in Asia. There's something that's been talked about that actually makes me feel uncomfortable because I don't really quite know how to think about it. I understand, but I always welcome people's input. I oftentimes hear from people, including Nazma and Ellie, that the minute men start to talk about this issue, we will know we are making progress. When men begin to talk about this issue, we know we are beginning to make progress. And I think we say that because men oftentimes are in leadership positions. I would only ask that when we talk about that, we don't dismiss the requirement that women step up and share their voice as well. Yes, men must talk about it, women must talk about it if we're going to win in the marketplace overall. And I do believe we're making progress, as I will point to in a few minutes.
Thank you, Scott. I think let's have a quick poll and we come back to the results later. There is a poll we have prepared. Which of the following gender-related issues should be prioritized by policymakers and stakeholders under COVID-19? And you can actually, I think it's a multiple choice, you can answer up to 3. You can take some time. We will come back to the answer at the end of our little talk show. I think Nazma is still not back, so maybe I have to continue then again directly to Ellie. And I see also some questions coming in for Joni. Maybe we can address them later in the Q&A part. So Ellie, what is the most important thing Indonesia has to do to ensure gender is at the forefront of the post-COVID-19 recovery in the garment and textile sector? And in answering that, could you talk about how social dialogue can advance gender equity? You already mentioned it a little bit, but can you just underline it one more time?
Yeah, I think some progress also already happened in Indonesia about social dialogue, because since COVID.
I think you have to switch off your video one more time. I'm so sorry, but it's too important, so we want to hear you clearly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Soon after COVID outbreak in Indonesia, we already sent a letter to all the company belongs to KSBC as our member, to make a dialogue directly with employer before the employer dismiss them. And almost more than 61% succeed, but yeah, the rest still continue to discuss about that. The specific needs and contribution of women as a workers, business owners, and entrepreneurs must be better understood and addressed when developing measures to reactive economy. So social dialogue need to to lie down my right, because we understand that we cannot demand our right 100% as before, because we understand the pandemic brings the difficult situation for the employer, for the workers, for government, for the whole globe. But we need the social dialogue can arrive to one way how to solving problem, how to recovery, how to send them back to the company. And the important things for us as trade union right now in Indonesia, increasing women workers' participation in social dialogue is extremely important, because how the women right can explain, can make to dialogue, can make to memorandum of understanding if there is no female voices there. Potential job losses cause COVID as complements before automation already happening. You know, the union in Indonesia always against there is no automation, because automation will happen next 10 years. But right now, everything already happening before automation come to our regulation. Strategic efforts are needed to encourage the integration of gender perspective. As you know, maybe before people doesn't aware about the gender perspective, but right now we have to think about that. You know, from equal pay, better work condition, reducing gender-based violence should be discussed between employer, also the workers. Yes, of course, we need the partnership, we need inclusion from all stakeholders, from international, brand, supplier, everything, IMF, World Bank, something like that. But I think the first step should be happen inside the company between workers and employer. How I'm not sure that even though ITUC also International Employer Association already make an agreement for action, but I'm not sure it will be happen and change automatically in field. But the important thing should be workers start negotiate, start discuss, make dialogue with employer, and everything will be okay. Even though, I mean, I always think about the Freddie Mercury lyric, like, how will it be if you are standing on my shoes? Can't you see there is no possible to choose? So yeah, there is no possible to choose except we sitting together to discuss about everything, about the pandemic, about the global economy, about the sustainability of the operation of the company. So learning from the current situation, social dialogue is very necessary between workers and employer. In social dialogue, we can ensure that transitions are fair to climate change in the world of work as we face it today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ellie. And I have one more question for Scott, and I understand Scott brought us some slides for that. Scott, what are the practical things what are the practical things that brands, producers could actually doing now to ensure gender is in front and the center of the post-19 garment and textile industry recovery? And we discussed this question before, and you brought us one or two slides, so I'm showing the slide right now.
Okay, thank you. If I could, I'd like to start with something that Ellie said. The importance of making this issue personal to everybody involved in the process, from the brands to the suppliers to the producers everyone along the process needs to understand and make this personal. Ellie, you said, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I'd like to take that question one step further for those people who are not supporting our position on this important issue, and that is simply, what would you do if this was your daughter? What would you do if this was your wife? What would you do if this was a friend or another loved one? As soon as we make this issue personal, that's when we will begin to make gains amongst men and women. So earlier I talked a bit about my biases, and I have 3 slides here that I'd like to share so that you understand where I come from. When I left the corporate world and established my small consultancy called Covidien, I did so based on the premise that the promise of humanity and the future of our planet are entirely dependent on our ability to collaborate. And there are a number of few words there that resonate: promise, humanity, future, dependent, and collaborate. This is the foundation of my understanding and the work that I'm doing. Next slide, please. And along the way, I believe that the foundation for making progress here is to do so through teamwork. Diligent, thoughtful, genuine, authentic teamwork. And the definition I use for teamwork is very simple: a diverse group of people coming together to achieve a common goal. And this doesn't say a group of people. This says a diverse group of people with various backgrounds, both professionally, socially, and personally. If we do this through an approach to teamwork, there's been some evidence recently that we can make progress. And if we can go to the next slide, I'll share with you quickly, probably discussed more in Q&A or perhaps at another time, a collaborative process matters. These points might be helpful to everybody on this call. Yes, this post-COVID situation is a historic opportunity. It's important that we show up post-COVID, but it's also important that we show up after that post-COVID environment and we continue to beat the drum on this topic. Making progress here requires working with friend, foe, and moderating third parties. I didn't say earlier a team that completely agrees on the topic, where everyone is fully aligned. We need to bring together teams of people, diverse teams of people, those who agree with how we move forward and those who differ. Define a common goal. And once we've defined a common goal, we start by identifying common ground. I don't think in reality, in one's heart, anyone appreciates the fact that this violence and harassment takes place. We should be prepared for resistance in this teamwork, and that's okay. I believe that resistance is a sign of progress. Resistance is people sharing a point of view that they genuinely believe in, and that allows us to discuss barriers to making progress. This is a really important point. It's vitally important that we understand and respect each other's business models. Now, I'm not saying that we understand, respect, and agree with other people's business models, but we understand them and respect them. Because the business model of a brand is complicated. The business model of a labor union is complicated. The business model of a supplier is complicated. The business model of a government is complicated. And all I'm asking is that when you gather as a team together, take time to understand the other party's business models. And by doing that, you will better understand the point of view that they come with. Next, often I hear the phrase, I've got an outside the box solution. I would ask simply, can we ignore the box? I don't know who invented the phrase, ignore the box, or an inside the box solution. There should be no box, because as soon as we establish a box, we put parameters on the outcome. Next, this notion of simplify to amplify. We can't overly complicate this process. We need to keep it simple to make progress. One of the things that we've learned over time is that if people don't understand something, another person's point of view or another approach, if understanding isn't present, people have a tendency to revert back to the prejudices that they understand, which inhibits progress. Seek a big win. Look for something that inspires others to follow your lead. And that then carries me to this very last point. It was a pleasure and a privilege, and in many ways a blessing for me to be a part of a problem that's been dealt with over the last couple of years in Lesotho, where people came together in a very difficult situation to work together to achieve a common goal, and they made progress en route to structured agreements to fight this or battle this problem. I want to call out the following organizations: Levi Strauss, the Children's Place Contour Brands, Nin Ching in Lesotho, unions in Lesotho, including the Independent Democratic Union, the United Textile Employee Union, and others, Lesotho women's rights advocates, and then US organizations led by the Solidarity Center, Workers United, and the Workers' Rights Consortium. The Worker Rights Consortium did some objective third-party research that showed in this facility in Lesotho that there was a problem. The brands, labor unions, and others came together. They formed a diverse team. They defined a common goal to make this stop. They established common ground. And as a result, there are now legally binding agreements in place in Lesotho that help to prevent violence and harassment that we've been discussing today. In particular, I'd ask you to reach out to these organizations, in particular WRC, as well as the Solidarity Center, who's running the program on the ground. That is something we can learn from and continue to make progress.
Thank you very much, Scott. So I'm looking at the time. We're going to have a couple of questions picking up from the chat, but before we do that, just quickly the results of our little poll. Lisa, we were asking which of the following gender-related issues should be prioritized by policymakers and stakeholders. Can you just show us quickly the results? Maybe the short version. We are running out of time and some questions are coming in.
Yes, thank you very much, Joost. So we asked these questions to see what in the audience opinion is where most action is needed. And this comes with no surprise. 36% of you said that gender-based violence and harassment is one of the biggest issues. On the second place is opportunities for women's voices, representation and leadership across the sector. And then also because of the crisis situation, access to healthcare and appropriate protective equipment to return to work safely. And we also asked you to add additional answers here. And I just want to read some of the answers I got here because I found it really interesting. It reflects more on what was answered in the second, like on the second place and on the third place. And one person said that advertising and encouraging the mindset that improvement leads to improvement of business. And another one is that maternity leave and paternity leave to be more inclusive in acknowledging the role of husbands in the family care. And also career progression of women, not only promotion, capacity building and counseling support. So we asked this question and to see, on the other hand, I mean, these results show where further information is also needed and guidance is wanted right now. So, and by organizing this webinar, we actually wanted to contribute to this dissemination of relevant information and bringing together different stakeholders to support further the implementation of gender equality. All right, these were the results of the second part.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. So let's have some Q&A. There is a question from Laurel. Of these speakers share examples of gender-sensitive responses to COVID-19 in the garment sector by government, brands, or suppliers so far. We heard Lesotho example, I think. So any good practice we should be aware of, any good examples we can build on beyond Lesotho, Ellie or Scott, and I think Nazma, right?
If I may add one.
Yes, please go ahead.
One of the things that we've seen a number of suppliers do around the world is they've actually changed the product that they made. So there were a number of suppliers and manufacturers around the world that pivoted to making another product in the midst of a crisis that kept people employed, it kept their wages stable, and at least it kept people coming to work. So over time, I think that suppliers have learned that they need to be more nimble in being able to transfer to other products should there be a crisis like COVID, hurricanes, or other natural disasters.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ellie, you would like to add also maybe a good example?
Yeah, we have also member, they are producing and then employer change the production to be mask, just to keep the workers stay there. And we have also more than, because I also active in the project advisory committee Ilo Better Work. We know that the member of Ilo Better Work in West Java also changed their production around 22 or 23 big company, just to keep the workers there, just to keep them get salary. And also surrounding here in Jakarta, because the workers can continue their job there, but they also agree to reduce the working hours, to reduce the day, also to change the production, just to make everything will be there as before. So that is also the what's that a good example. But I think why this happened in that company, because they're sitting together to talk about that. Instead of employer to dismiss or lay off the workers, employer offering that situation, that idea, and finally the workers also agree about it. But I think not only demand or asking employer to keep the workers there, but trade union or worker also have to prove their ability as a partner in that company to arrive in win-win solution by the social dialogue. Because for my side, trade union were able to get a various victory because can have collective bargaining and need social dialogue more than ever. So it's really important right now.
Thank you, Ellie. Nazma, I think we have you back. I think you can unmute your mic. Can you hear us?
Can we?
Yes, we hear you, Nazma. We hear you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So it's, I don't know, the connection was really bad. So sorry.
Yes, so I have a question for you. We also have already asked Scott and Ellie. So are there any good examples of gender-sensitive responses to COVID-19 in the garment sector by governments, brands, or suppliers you can highlight for us? By governments, brands, or suppliers we can build on. Is there anything? And I think you actually, if I remember, you had recently a collective bargaining agreement with Hoplun Apparel in early June. I think, was this also a good example?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry because the connection and things are going very bad. So if we really want to talk about the gender issues and to protect the women's and workers and their livelihood, I think there should be we need some because COVID also teach us a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities here. So how that we need to be amendment some law. And you know, in Bangladesh we don't have the gender-based violence any law, only we have the High Court guideline. So we need to be the government to be pass the bill for the workplace harassment and abuse, and that's also supplier need to be also ensured, because you know the fear in Bangladesh, they said sexual harassment we don't have because sexual harassment is not the gender-based violence issue. It's also related to the payment, maternity issue, bullying, misbehave, absenteeism, job security, many things. And we have only the anti-harassment committee in the High Court verdict. So we need that things. And also the brand also need to be responsible on this area, how the supplier and brand work together and support our government. And also ILO work of world, the convention 190, that also we need to be ratified from Bangladesh. We need to be mobilization, we need to be dialogue, we need to be sensitized within the factory management, co-workers, and especially the union movement should be big, because it's not only the women are facing problem within the workplace with the boss, also the union movement, also women are very difficult position facing with the men, because they are always thinking women should not be raised the voice, women should be quiet, women should be. This is the patriotic society system need to be changed. Male dominating society system need to be changed, because women has lot of value. If you see the garments workers, the foreign currency earned 80% are by the female, but when the things are going bad, it is women. So these kind of things, one of the things, but we hope Bangladesh government will be do very easily. And also the purchasing practice behavior is very important, because the fair purchasing practice is not happen. Gender-based violence, the protection, child rights, women's rights, everything will be addressed, unaddressing. So, and I believe that one thing, if we really want to change, that should be freedom of association and collective bargaining. See, this COVID-19 is very severe issues, severe thing. It's possible if the union is active, if the management are active, and if they really want. You see that we have signed the collective bargaining agreement June 16 in Bangladesh, where the workers are addressing 10% increment, gender-based anti-harassment committee. There is women leaders signing this agreement, and there is 5 sanitary napkin program free tea, and they have to give giving the daycare center in community, and they are also giving union office, they are also taking subscription. So if we really want to change this system, and we need to distribute the power, that factory level union can change, and which is the Hope Loan was the example, and we are welcome to visit them and how they impact the productivity and how they are getting, because we are talking about the living wage. This collective bargaining can be changed, the living wage, decent life, decent thing. Without workers' voice, without worker things, it not. So that is why the brands, government, the European American government, all to be accountable and responsible, and how make also fair purchasing practice again and again, because this cheap labor make us our hunger. Cheap labor make us disrespect. As women has double burden, they need to work, they need to earn money, they need to cook, because women need to be hundreds things. And if you are in South Asian woman, you have to be good mother, if you have to good wife, good sister-in-law. So even in the factory. So if we really want to address these things, the union, the collective bargaining, which is Hope Loan done, because this is the Hope Loan second factory union, where the 10,000 workers are getting more than beyond the minimum wage, and a lot of facility. They have a food canteen, they have efficiency bonus, they have many other area. Even they are trying to be women promotional position, because we are not only talking of the union leadership, also factory level women promotion also very important, because most of the men are running the production and the boss, and most all women are women, so they are treated them as like a instrument. They are not treated, they are human, and they are abusing, giving little advantage, and they are abusing. So these kind of things need to be stopped, because this sector is whole supply chain is not transparent. So how we have to do the social dialogue, living wage, and gender-based violence, this key issue, all we need to work together, all we need to address this issue, and we need to fight and we need to be collaboration and action. We need to work together, because if we work individually, oh, it's a union job, it's a government job, it's a supplier job, it's a brand job. No, all need to be how we make together to make better sustainable industrial relation, industry and workers' life and livelihood, because the nutrition is a big challenge. Even if we are talking about the women thing in Bangladesh, the textile sector, after 40 to 45 years old women, they cannot work in the production floor because they have no energy, they have no production capacity. So voluntarily they leave this sector. So we need to protect these workers. We need, if workers are not sustained, then industry will not sustain. So COVID-19 also, we need to be social protection, unemployment scheme, and benefit. These are things also need to be addressed, because our workers are very vulnerable, especially the women, and they need to be protected. And it's all business community and the people who are getting profit, and they are not taking the responsibility. So responsible buying and constructive union and good dialogue and trust building, and women should be get the priority and quota, and how set up the environment, because women can change a lot of things, because women has 10 hand, they can cook, they can wash, they can earn money, they can give good production, and the distribution is not going properly with the woman. So we want the equal distribution and equal things, and we have more union organized, and we need more things, and we are signing a lot of collective bargaining in Bangladesh. We have a lot of good things, and we need to branding also, and also we need to overcome the challenges, because we are not enemy in this industry. We are not against this industry. We love this industry, but industry should be also love the workers, especially women. So this is the things, and because Hope Loan, if they can do, why not other manufacturer? Because they are also working for very basic brand, basic product, and they're not going for the high fashion luxury things, because it's mentality and awareness and education also important, and sincerity is very important. And that is why all stakeholders should be accountable, all stakeholders, how they have to work and how this protect these girls and things, because this economic is depend this women. Economic is drivers this. The profit is going only the brand and supplier. Profit should goes to the workers, not loss. So that is the important, and the CBA and this example like Hope Loan. So I'm requesting all of them, please go to our website or Facebook or Twitter. We have different type of agreement. We have doing a lot of women committee and gender-based violence issues. We live in ways addressing. So we are change maker. We are trying to do this. So we need support, and we need to work together. How to make more change? How to make also the women need to be digitalization. There is also a lot of things need to be done, because the auto machine also kill women's job. So auto machine, how we can make the capacity and build their to run these things, because men always thinking auto machine is a man job. No, it's a women's job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nazma. So I'm looking at the time. Officially, we have actually reached the end of our time. With your permission, I'm going to continue a few minutes more. First of all, I want to ask, I think Scott and Ellie, I mean, you know that our Asian dialogue is called Getting Through the Crisis Together. Our topic today is making gender equality a reality. Maybe just if you have in 1 minute, maybe highlight again, what is your key advice, your golden nugget, your key message for our participants here? What they should definitely take home as a key message from you. So maybe Scott, you go first.
Collaborate with those people who matter, show up at the table, and be willing to have thoughtful, sincere, and genuine conversations, even with those people with whom you disagree. At the same time, you work to understand everybody's business model at the table, so you understand the point of view that they represent.
Thank you, Scott. Ellie, your golden advice or your golden wish, so to say.
Yeah, establish dialogue mechanism between affected workers and employers and government. Needed right now, also with the partner supplier, brand, and also international institution. Need capacity from trade union also to bring the issue to the table. Gender equality also is the big issue to be discussed, negotiated, and social dialogue should be appear as to show defending and protecting the workers. That trade union needs a social dialogue with management to keep workers employed. Initiated a joint statement with employer association and global brands to protect the health and welfare of the workers. Trade union will be able to get victory if trade union also put themselves in the employer shoes and also in the situation. So I will be highlight about the good communication can bring us to the peace. So just respect them and they will respect you, and then we can raise the issue together, and then we can arrive in the win-win solution, just to recovery, just to continue our life as before. Maybe we cannot demand as normal situation right now, but together we can do everything. Together we can fight for the sustainability of our life.
Thank you, Ellie. So we're going to show a final poll. Please, in case you have to leave, help us to learn from you. We apologize for the small hiccups we had today, but as you know, we're living in a time where maybe the internet is not always working as we want it to work. I hand over to Dr. Stephen Frost. Dr. Stephen Frost has always been our final commentator. He is also the editor of the sustainability newsletter of Go Blue, and a professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and a senior expert on the garment and textile industry. So Stephen, you have been listening in as always. Can you highlight a few things that you take away from today's conversation?
Thanks, Joost. I think by senior expert, you mean old guy, right? Right, the quote of the webinar was from Nazma. We love the industry should love us. Fantastic. I know time is short, so usually I take 3 takeaways, but today I'll just stick with 2. The first one's very short. It's something that Scott said that really resonated. It's become my own personal motto over the last couple of years. The future belongs to those who show up. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be there. The second point, the main point I want to make is that listening to Ellie and Nazma, it really occurred to me that people are really listening to this conversation like never before. So I've spent 20 years or more than 20 years kind of looking at these issues in garment, well, not just garment, but in supply chains. And I have never seen so much interest by ordinary people in what brands are doing in their supply chains. So I look on Twitter and I see workers being sacked from a Pakistan factory. I see trade unionists under pressure in Myanmar. I see stories about migrant workers in India. I see stories about factories closing for quarantine in Romania and Albania. I see all of this on Twitter and I see all this on other kind of social media, and then it percolates up to the mainstream media, and then it gets into Reuters and New York Times, and the Daily Star in Bangladesh, and et cetera, et cetera. And this really has hit me in the last couple of weeks when I have seen on Twitter, I think for the first time ever, workplace issues deep in the supply chain being viewed by millions of people on Twitter. So I saw a video of a strike in an Indian factory, an Indian garment, very large Indian garment factory in the last couple of weeks. And someone had just taken a 30-second, iPhone video of a crowd of workers just kind of protesting outside the factory gates. And when I looked at it last week, there were 4 million views 4 million views on that video on Twitter. And I just thought to myself, you know, I've been kind of working on the workplace issues in supply chains for 20 years. I've never seen this kind of interest. So, you know, when Nazma and Ellie talking and everyone here listening, it's really going out to a lot of people now. And I think for the brands, for the investors, for all those stakeholders that Scott mentioned, they're listening more than ever too, and they're going to be under more pressure than ever. The brands, the investors, everybody. So, yeah, times are changing, and we'll need to change with them. All right, my time is up. Thank you very much, Joost. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And I just wanted to highlight that we are going to have the next webinar number 6 in our Asian Dialogue series on July 14th. And we will hear actually from workers herself, the impact of COVID-19 on garment workers is our title. We will inform you through our usual channels, and I'm sure it will be a very interesting webinar again with excellent speakers. So please be advised, we are not going to close this webinar now. We are going to keep the channels open for another 10-15 minutes. And also Scott mentioned to me that that he might be available for supporting people who would be interested in his services. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about what you told me?
Thank you, Joost. It's really very simple. This issue has become near and dear to my heart. I have been privileged to meet many people around the world, both passionately affected and those who are passionately trying to make a difference. And I stand ready to help the people on this call and others on a pro bono basis to help share my experiences and help them collaborate with others in a way that matters.
Thank you, Scott. And maybe even you have, I think, put it already in the chat, and the chat is full of interesting links and from people who are trying to highlight some interesting sources. Can you highlight, I think you put your email there. Can you put it in there one more time right after you have made this announcement? Thank you so much. So first of all, for the people who have to leave, thank you very much for tuning in today to our webinar. I also thank, of course, our speakers, Irene, Joni, Nazma, Scott, Ellie, and of course, Dr. Stephen Frost at the end to share some of their thoughts and insights. I realized that this issue cannot be discussed in 90 minutes. Of course not. We should have had more time this time. But on the other hand, we are happy that many of you stayed more than 90 minutes with us. So wherever you are, have a good day or good night. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hope many of you will join us in the next webinar on the 14th of July. And we keep the chat open, so please write comments. And if you have had the time, or if you have the time, please do our poll so that we can learn from you how we can improve. And we're also asking for more topics. I think we have a lot of topics already lined up, but we always like to hear more ideas. Thank you so much and have a good day, night.